Okay, so before we get into the specifics of anorexia as it relates to exercise dependence, bulimia as it relates to exercise dependence, this secondary exercise addiction concept, I want to just mention some research about, in general, the types of disorders or psychiatric pathologies that have been found by research to be comorbid or co-occurring with exercise dependence. As I've mentioned kind of more than once, eating disorders have been found to be the psychological problems that are most commonly co-occurring or most commonly comorbid with exercise dependence. But I do want to mention some others as well before we move on and focus on those in particular. This is based on a review by Freymuth and colleagues in 2011. Research estimates suggest between 15 to 20% of individuals who are exercise addicted are also addicted to other things, including substances, nicotine, alcohol, and or illegal drugs. And sometimes these illegal drugs are part of actually an athletic endeavor. So for example, there are athletes who purposefully use illegal stimulants, including cocaine, which is a very strong central nervous system stimulant, or amphetamines of varying kinds to improve their athletic performance, to raise their blood pressure, to get them to be more alert, etc. Some research shows a positive association or correlation between alcohol and nicotine use and exercise dependence, so that goes along with the prior finding. Remember, positive correlation means as one variable increases, the other variable increases. So in this case, it would be the more people report exercise dependence behaviors, the more likely they are to be addicted to alcohol and or nicotine. Some research suggests, though not all, some research suggests up to a quarter of people, 25% of people with exercise dependence, also have some other type of addiction. Buying addiction, so compulsive shopping behaviors, and sex addiction, which you guys know a lot about because we talked about this in a prior class, have been identified as common amongst those who also meet exercise dependence criteria. Exercise addiction tends to cluster with food disorders, caffeine use, shopping addiction, and even workaholism. So I think the message that this research collectively is indicating is that exercise dependency may be symptomatic of a larger sort of dependency problem. And there's been some really interesting research on the so-called addictive personality type. It is very controversial, but this idea that there are certain personality characteristics that make people more likely to become excessive or dependent on not just one thing, but multiple things. And often they might shift from one addiction to another, to another, to another, which would be explained in these examples of people who might go from alcohol and nicotine to exercise dependence, for example. Or if they're not exercising excessively, they're eating excessively. If they're not eating excessively, they're shopping excessively. If they're not shopping excessively, they're working, so that everything in their lives is done to a point of excess. And so it's more a core personality set of characteristics driving these various dependencies rather than something unique to just one dependency. Now, having said all of that, I will reiterate that eating disorders are, particularly anorexia and bulimia, are the most common disorders found to co-occur with exercise addiction. Approximately 39% to 50% of people suffering from eating disorders also suffer from exercise addiction. So with that in mind, on my next video, I'm going to focus on the relationship between exercise dependence and the specific eating disorders we talked about last class. So I will see you there. I'm sorry, my dog is being very, 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 very childish today and throwing a little doggy tantrum behind me because I'm busy and he wants my attention. So my apologies.